Joining us today on the Daily Dose, I have a guest that I am very much looking forward to speaking with. Ahmard Vital is a former college football player. He is a former college football recruiting analyst with Scout.com. He is an accomplished author of a few books, including one that has been labeled The Athlete's Life Manual. Yeah, I want to hear about that. He has also formed a media group, and he's a motivational speaker that has helped secure funds of more than $6 million in scholarship money for athletes that desperately need it. He has worked with athletes at the D1 level. He's worked with athletes going to the NFL. I have a number of questions for him that I want to get to, but first and foremost, Ahmard, thank you so much for joining us today on the Daily Dose.
Thank you for having me on.
Before we jump in, tell me a little bit about where you grew up, how you grew up. What was life like for young Ahmard?
Well, again, thank you. And, a young Ahmard, I come from the giant metroplex of New Caney, Texas.
Okay.
Came up as a young man, awesome family, didn't work out in the long run. My mother and father split up around the age of 12. But in between there, I developed a joy for writing. I'll say that I learned how to walk and I learned how to write not long after. And so I took that all the way into my high school years. I was the editor of my school newspaper.
Okay.
Took that into college. I went to Stephen F. Austin State University, majored in journalism there, while also playing some ball as well. Walked onto the team. 28 guys tried out. 2 of us made it. Wow. So here we are, conference championship, 1999. And the writing career continued on. Graduated from college and took a job at a small community newspaper. Not making much money. I always jokingly say I was making more money selling pitchers and Long Island iced teas at the bar in Nacogdoches than I did when I got a professional job.
Sure.
Looked at my father and I said, there's no way I'm taking this job at 10 an hour. And he said, you'll take that job and you'll like it. He said, because if you can learn to live at a certain level, you'll never be broke again. I was making $17,700 and I was in Houston. And I was like, man, how am I supposed to make this work? Now, thankfully, my dad helped me out a little bit. Instead of making $17,700, he paid me $500 a month to take care of business for him over here while I was over here. So I was making $23,700 a month, which I mean, hey, that's the difference between, groceries and not groceries. So,
yes, sir.
But you're still pretty much below the poverty line.
Right.
And I just leveraged that into, and next thing you know, I run into a guy who covered college football recruiting. And I was just like, how can I get in? And I just started writing for him. And next thing you know, I gained some notoriety. People started seeing like, who's this guy in Texas? And next thing you know, I'm at the Army All-American Bowl with the VP. And he offered me a contract. My first contract was for $500 a month. And you couldn't tell me anything because I thought that was the greatest amount of money to ever earn writing. And of course, I doubled up on my efforts. 500 turned to 1,000. And then it's all downhill from there or uphill from there. And so that really just kind of cemented me into that. And working with athletes from a college football recruiting and standpoint has always been my thing for some time. And lo and behold, even though I've sort of gotten out of it, it's like the mob. They keep bringing you back.
Yes.
So I'm still available. I'm still available from all of my athletes. And lo and behold, I walk around in my church and I see these young kids and I'm like, man, we have some healthy babies here. I was like, you all never want me to retire, do you? Because this young man is 3 years old and I'm already wondering if he's going to be a D tackle or a tight end. Hey, that's where we are. So it's been good times.
Are you still down in Texas now? Is that where you currently reside?
I am. I'm in North Houston.
Okay. Yeah. So let me ask you this. What were the teams and the athletes that you grew up kind of rooting for, kind of wanting to emulate?
Well, to be fair, once I got into journalism, I realized that you cannot root for teams.
You are correct.
Because once you start rooting for teams, you can no longer be objective. I will say that the first major athlete I covered, he was a sophomore, was Andrew Luck.
Okay.
He was one of the 4 schools I was covering. It was Memorial, Stratford, Northbrook, and Springwoods. And so he was this first major athlete, but it was funny because one of his competitors on the other side of the ball was Michael Thomas, who went to Nimitz, ended up going to Stanford, and is now still with the Cincinnati Bengals. 2 guys, obviously, definitely Michael interviewed directly for Awaken the Baller Within. Russell Shepard was huge during that time. One of our first 5 stars, first 10 in the country. Yeah, I saw some. So you say who the top teams were? Definitely in the Houston area. You have to put Katy in there. The Woodlands has had some good runs. And in recent years, obviously, you got, your Manvilles, you got your, now Shadow Creek. Westfield is good. North Shore is always good. Man, we're loaded out here. So, I mean, I'm sure one of my people are going to be like, you forgot us. I'm like, my bad. I apologize. But there's always been but definitely those are some of the perennial powerhouses. Like I said, Pearland has always been a solid one. And, the Fort Bend schools have a bunch. You're talking about Marshall. You're talking about Hightower, Elkins. The Matthews sons went to the Elkins school. A lot of guys came out of Hightower during those years. Man, it's just it's loaded out here, man. I could probably pull out old DVD tapes from back in the day and just show you just a laundry list of great athletes.
Before we get to your writing, before we get to your post, what sports did you grow up playing? What were you doing as a kid?
I was a 3-sport athlete. I played football, I played basketball, and I ran track.
What position were you playing in football?
I was a DB, and obviously I doubled as a wide receiver. When you're in middle school, you play everything. If you run faster than a 4.6, you're playing every position.
Sure.
As a freshman, I played running back, receiver, quarterback, and I played some defense. But for me to get on the varsity squad, I was a starter on varsity as a sophomore as a defensive back, as a corner.
Okay. So you ended up playing college football.
Mm-hmm.
You ended up playing at Stephen F. Austin?
That's correct.
Who were you playing for there? Who was your coach while you were playing college ball?
It was Santiago. He had just came over. He was the OC for McNeese for many years, and then he came over.
Okay.
So his first year and my first year were the same.
Okay. I got a question for you. You're playing down there. You're playing. I understand Stephen F. Austin is not this blue blood. You're playing some big time talent if you're playing down there. Who's the best player you ever faced?
Oh, well, you got to remember, I was a walk-on at Stephen F.
Sure.
So I did not get much time as far as that's concerned. I went about 1.5 years, 2 years before I tore my ankle up.
Okay.
I will say this. Faced would be a little bit tougher than played with.
Okay.
So when I came on, Jeremiah Trotter was leaving for the NFL.
Oh, wow.
Along with Michael Ricks. Those two guys were just finishing up. But the best player I ever played with would have been Derek Blaylock.
Okay.
For those who remember Derek Blaylock, he backed up Priest Holmes for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Hey, those are some pretty good names. That's not all bad.
Yes, he's a great guy. I actually his son ended up going to Wisconsin. I ended up covering his son. His son went to Atascocita, which is not too far from where I live right now, and ended up going to Wisconsin as a defensive back. And he and his son look strikingly exactly the same.
Really?
Like, I swear I was looking at his father. So yes, I've seen a few things, but those would be probably the 3 guys. Like I said, 2 were on the way out, but I did play with Derek Blaylock.
Okay. I've got another question for you. And I ask a lot of people that go into the kind of the coaching realm, which I do consider you in that realm. Did you ever have a coach, whether it was, in high school, maybe it was middle school, maybe it was college, that you were like, that was the person that just impacted me? Maybe it was good. I've talked to people that it was a bad coach. It was a coach that showed me what I didn't want to do. Who was that coach that impacted you the most?
Man, it's funny you're asking me at this time because there are two coaches, and I'm still in touch with them right now. They were my coaches in high school, track and football. Okay. Coach Tim Smith and Coach Chris Nelson. I just spoke at their school last offseason. They were offensive and defensive coordinators out there, and there is no athlete Ahmard Vital without those 2 guys. Those 2 guys impacted me in so many ways. I was reckless in high school, got into a lot of junk, and there were some coaches who was like, this guy doesn't need to be a part of sports anymore. And like, those 2 guys were like, he's done some crazy things, but we need to show him some grace and give him the opportunity. I think at the time when I made those mistakes, I was a sophomore, starting on varsity, and going into the off season. And I think if sports would have been taken from me at that time, I don't know what direction I would have gone into. Sports, like I said, I played all three. I played, there was never off season for me. Football leads into basketball leads into track. But those two gentlemen went to bat for me, hardcore, and they're still my guys. I actually just got through texting one of them a couple of weeks back because they've moved on to other schools, but they know that no matter what, wherever they've been coaching, I've spoken to their teams for the most part. So I've traveled all over the state for those guys to speak wherever they are. So those two guys impacted me on a whole nother level.
Did you ever consider going into that whole coaching field and just staying in the athletic side of just coaching?
I did, and I possibly have. I've done some things at some camps here and there, but I never went full-fledged where I was, in a high school or college and things. It's always been camps, combines, types of things. And me, I've always wanted to be on the media side of it, mostly. I do some training in the weight room with some guys here and there, but for the most part of the actual coaching, I've not jumped into that for the most part.
So you get done with college, you finish up, you graduate. What is the plan? What is it you want to do? What direction are you looking to go into?
Writing. That was
Okay.
100% what I wanted to do. That was where I was led to. And it's interesting, no matter where I end up, writing is always the foundation of it. Worked at the community newspaper. I was doing sports in Spring Branch, and I was doing news in Katy. So I was covering both sides. It was a community newspaper that I was working.
So you begin covering college football recruiting.
Yes.
Are you taking the kids right out of high school? You're looking at high school kids, or are you looking at the next jump from college?
So it was the high school kids and the recruiting process that led them to make their commitments on signing.
Okay.
All the process around that. So all the process leading up to that, I'm at spring ball with all the coaches, all the college coaches coming in town. I got connections with those guys because obviously I'm on the ground and they're like, this guy knows where all the talent is. Of course they do as well, but it's like I would always have a sleeper report because you always knew who the top 100 were. Right. But it's like, who's that guy who's not quite there yet? And so I kind of specialize in that because I was always looking for a sleeper. So I got the guys who are in high school and on their way to college, cover them through sign day. I followed them a little bit in college as well, but I was more so the process coming out of high school, going into college, the official visits, the recruiting trips, the spring ball, summer combines, Army All-American Bowl, all of those things. So that was where I was. What
did you enjoy about that particular job? What did you like? Was it, seeing those kids grow? Was it, hey, I get to be around this? What was the part of the job that you just loved?
Well, I mean, I'm a jock myself, so I love being around. I love being around that. I like seeing guys operate at the highest levels, and I like seeing guys get opportunities that probably they didn't know existed. Sure. Right? You get to be part of the process. Yeah, of course the coaches are doing all the work, but the work we did in writing articles and bringing awareness to guys and things of that nature. There's so many coaches who thanked us for that type of work. Sure. I remember my brother worked at a school out on the southeast side. I guess that'd be more southwest-ish. He worked at a school called Foster, and he was like, "Hey man, I need you to come out here and see this receiver I have. I think he's going to be pretty good." I'm like, "Man, okay, who is he?" He's like CD Lamb.
Oh,
and I was like, and there was a guy, built very lean at the time. I think he was like a freshman or a sophomore, and I was watching him do his routes. I'm like, man, this guy's he's gonna be a stud. And I remember just walking through that process with him. He had a linebacker on that same team, ended up going to Texas Tech. And I remember looking at this young man, I was like, this guy is going to be pretty good. And I think I remember when he got his first offer and his second offer, and you can always tell the progression and see when the dam is going to open. And then when the Oklahoma offer came, it's like, okay, everybody in the country is going to offer this guy. And lo and behold, that's what ended up happening. But it's like, there's so many guys who you found who were just like, whether they're freshmen, whether they're, sophomores, or whether they're that unkept sleeper as a junior, or the guy who moved from the basketball court and came onto the football field, like Mike Evans. Yeah. Right. He was a top flight basketball player, and coach was like, I think we're going to try him at receiver. yeah, I think that worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
You know,
same too.
and I love seeing young men's dreams come to fruition, right? You know, I noticed like you listed off all those things I'm doing right now. I realized at the core of it, like young people and young adults are at the core of pretty much everything I do. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, maybe I'm onto something here. Maybe that's my call. And it is. But that was the main thing. I wanted to see young men, regardless of their background, regardless of where they come from, to have the opportunity to play a sport they love and also put themselves in position to be very well off financially without even going to the NFL. Because the thing is the guys I interviewed for Awaken the Baller Within, a couple of them made it to the NFL. You know, obviously Luck made it in, Russell Shepard made it in, Michael Thomas made it in. I think Casey Carrier may or may not have made it in. But the bottom line is all these guys are successful in life, right?
See, that's a big key right there.
They are successful in life. They're family men. They're building strong families. They have businesses. One of my guys who went to Rice, I was just on the phone with him. I was just on the horn with him recently. He's in Austin, got a gigantic, thriving construction company, right? You know, one of the top running backs coming out of Katy. He's an actor. He's a family man as well. Another gentleman came out of high school, came out of college. He's an engineer. He was 22 years old, making about $80,000 to $84,000 a year, right? These guys, I got receipts of these guys doing so many great and amazing things. And it's like, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Using sports as a springboard to get where you are trying to go. Because I always tell people, it's like, even if you make it all the way to the professional level, right? Let's say you played all of high school, you played all of college, and you had, let's just say a 7 to 10 year NFL career, which is a long time in today's standards.
Very.
So you're old in football, but what are you, 33, 35 years old?
Yeah.
In life, you're still a young man. So what are you going to do to pivot into that? And I love the fact that the guys I spoke with, they had the mindset to be able to use the success on the field, and it would work off the field as well. Because we know a lot of people with talent, but no mindset, no work ethic, no leadership. And so there's a correlation that comes between success and it comes across the board where guys, can come up and level up and do well in life on and off the field.
Really, really good stuff there. And you hit so many points that as a former coach are important to me, because people would say to me as a coach, how do you think your team did this year? Well, on the court, we did this, but I will not be able to tell you how my team did for another 10 to 15 years, because until I see what I'm going to reap there, that is the most important thing. What we did on the court, lovely, wonderful, but it's so temporary. That other stuff is so long lasting. Okay, so I can see the passion that you have for it. I can see the passion you have for your kids, but I got to ask you this. You're on the football recruiting side. You're seeing kids come in. You're also seeing some stuff you probably don't like. What was the part of that job that you didn't like to see? What did you maybe witness that you were like, oh man, I feel like we should be doing better for our kids, or something along those lines there?
Oh, that's a great question, by the way. The social media side of things has started jumping up into there. And I think the over promotion of a new offer was a bit much. Every time you get one, it's like it needed to be posted, right? And that was one thing. That was one thing I loved about Russell Shepard, and really would love too, both of those guys, and probably even to some degree Michael Thomas. I remember when I broke Russell Shepard's commitment to LSU, he called me and he's just like, "Hey man, I just want to give you the update. You're the first person I'm calling. I'm going to LSU." I'm like no. He's like, "Yeah, I'm not. It's no need to." He's like, I'm giving you that first. I'm gonna call the other guys here. I'm gonna go let you get the story out or whatever. But it wasn't, jumping out of an airplane. It wasn't pulling a truck over your commitment place. It wasn't, this parade and then boom, an explosion of a balloon is like, I'm going to Notre Dame. Right. Like, I think it just started becoming too much of like, so you have 47 offers. You can only go to one school. Right. And I just thought, and I get it. I'm not a big fan of the hat game.
See, not either.
That it's like I'm my father's child. Maybe I'm old school, and
right.
I just it's kind of like the whole showing up your opponent.
Yes.
It's like there's millions of dollars into these programs. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars recruiting you, and you wonder, like, did you call these coaches first? Like, because I know some of them don't.
Right.
They're like, I've known players who commit, and that was I think the thing, if I could name one thing, is the decommitments.
Yeah.
The decommitments to me were just like, I'm a soft verbal. It's like, okay, it's like, hey, you're my girl, but I'm still shopping,
See.
type of thing. And I think those are some of the things, and just really, it created an entitlement
Yeah.
issue that was just a bit much to me, because I knew dudes with a ton of offers, man. I remember the Sam McGuffey hurdling the guy in the tape going viral on YouTube,
Yeah.
right? I wasn't at that game, but I was right around the corner,
Right.
but I remember when that happened. And I just remember, a lot of these guys, especially some of the high-end guys, they're obviously getting the Michigans, the Ohio States, the USC, the Oklahomas, the major schools, and schools like, Rice and Florida Atlantic. And it was just like, yeah, I just got those offers, whatever. And it's just like, what was interesting is like 2/3 of them ended up at those schools when they flunked out, or they couldn't make the roster at those other schools. And it's like, wow, isn't that a sign of full circle humility?
Sure.
So I think that part of it, the commitment, the show around commitments, I remember when, guys would purposely not commit on signing day because they wanted to have their own ceremony. It's just like, really? Like, do we need to do all that? And I just think that, like, now obviously it's getting younger and younger. They're making profiles for middle schoolers, and I'm just like, I have people come up to me now and say, hey, my kid's in middle school. Can you make a profile for him? I'm trying to petition for my son in middle school, taking over all of this. And I'm just like, why don't you just let it play out and let him dominate at the level he is? Because I'm not saying he's not a great athlete, but it's like, let's not force this too quickly. Let's let him, if he makes the varsity as a freshman, so be it. But 8th grade and you feel like you need to play at the varsity level, who's to say you're even going to make it to the varsity level? You might end up on JV. And not to mention how doing that, what does that do for like his classmates? Because eventually they're going to catch up with him, right? And it's like, is there going to be some animosity there? Like, did you abandon us? I mean, I try to throw these things out here. And of course people say, oh, you're just old school. I am. I'm traditional. I'm old school. But old school values are absolutely needed right now in today's society and in a sports league, right? Do we need the show, right? I mean, I know I keep bringing him up, but that's another thing I loved about Russell Shepard. He would just completely demolish the defense, and he would just take the ball and hand it back to the ref. I always say the most excitement I ever seen him make after a touchdown was to run back to the sideline and pump his fist. That's the most he ever did.
Sure.
And I was like, Russ, dude, you just ran for 200 yards and everything. I was like, I noticed you never do this. He's like, Vital, I've already done all the damage to them in the plays I made. Why do I need to do more after I score? Yeah. That was his mindset. And that's why I love that dude, man. That's why I still right now. And, and he's a great dude. But that's what I can't stand about the game.
I couldn't agree with you more. Excellent points there. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. I have not pre-warned you. I've not told you this is coming. But you scouted players, you took a look at players, and I'm going to go ahead and assume you had to kind of give them, hey, here's what he does well, here's what he doesn't do well, here's what he needs to work on, those kind of things. You're coming out of high school. Give me your scouting report of Ahmard Vital. What would you have said about him? What kind of report would you have given him?
Oh, man. So I was scouting report. I was pretty good. I was pretty good in press man. Pretty aggressive in that way. Could have learned to keep my head up a little bit more when I was tackling. A little bit more ball awareness. I was a little bit more of kind of a renegade. Didn't always play by the technique. Okay. Could come out of my breaks much better, especially on the out route. Bit far too many times on the give and go or the out and up, whichever one you want to go. Sure. I was just too aggressive in that regard. I probably could have taken losses much better, a little bit more mental toughness, for sure. My senior year, I cleaned it up, but the attitude issues. I felt like I was a good teammate, but at the same time, I could have been a lot more supportive. Put in a little bit more work to get my upper body strength. I was always good in the lower body, but my upper body strength wasn't quite where it needed to be. And I got to, you learn that quickly in college as I got stronger pretty quick.
Sure.
And just, I think, taking the game a little bit more serious in my earlier years in high school. Like when I made the varsity football team, I should have put in the extra. I should have worked out like I did going into my senior year, like I did going into my sophomore year. I would say that would be the thing.
I absolutely love your answer. And it's funny because as a coach, so many people they're focused on their opponent. What does my opponent do? What does my opponent do? And I'm always said, I understand that. I was a scout. I did a lot of scouting. And yet, if you don't know yourself, you're not realistic. And the thing that I admire about what you said was it wasn't, I was good at this, I was good at this, I was good at this. It was critiques. It was, I could have been better here. I could have been better here. I absolutely love that because you think like a coach, and I can absolutely respect that. Since I have you here, I'm going to get to some other things that you've done, but I've got to take advantage of your knowledge. You know football, you know the game. I'm going to give you the top pick in the NFL draft. You are the Carolina Panthers. Is there anybody specific that you'd like? Are you going to go, Alabama quarterback Bryce Young? Are you going to go Ohio State quarterback CJ Stroud? Is there somebody else? I'm going to put you on the spot. You have the first pick. I'm going to put you in charge. Who are you taking?
So I'm a huge proponent of CJ Stroud.
Okay.
I like him a lot.
Yeah.
And I so want my Texans to do that decision because I'm still a little stung over this because I just knew Deshaun Watson was our future, and we were right. And I was like, man, we could have built. And I was like, man, we did what we're supposed to. You go get the quarterback. We overpaid for a left tackle. It's just like, yes, get tons of land, give away the farm. Got to take care of our guys, and then everything just fell apart. And it's like we're back right where we were before, and So of all the quarterbacks, I did like Stroud quite a bit. He seemed like he had himself together. Of course, I did read on a report recently that made my stomach hurt. It says that the Texans are not big on Stroud, Young, or not Hooker, Levis. And it's like, and they're really in with like Will Anderson. And don't get me wrong, I love that man's game. That man's game is sick. Yeah. But we've done the take defense guy first.
Yeah.
We did it with Clowney. We did it with Mario Williams. And I'm not saying it didn't work out, but my goodness, this in today's league, we got to get some points.
You need that guy.
Some points. And you know what? Not to say that those guys who are going to go in the first round of defense are not completely awesome, but you can find a dog in the third round.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You can.
And by the way, if we're going to go get someone, can you get me an Earl Thomas type safety, please?
Sure.
Can we get something like that? So I'm a CJ Stroud guy. I would be happy if we did that. There's so many teams out there that are a quarterback away, and I want us to get back to the point where we're building. Of all the quarterbacks coming out, I think Stroud is the guy I like the most. Bryce Young does do things, but like, and I don't say this as a slight or whatever. I like dudes who are a little bit thicker.
He's a small guy.
Just because, they didn't make Aaron Donalds back in the day. They do now. It was like Reggie White and everybody else. Not to say that there weren't really stud guys, but like Reggie White was just a step above. Lawrence Taylor was a step above. Singletary was a step above. Aaron Donald is like, I've never seen a dude that big and have a six-pack and be that strong. Like what is this? Not who is this? What are we doing here?
Yep.
And so I say that from the standpoint that these guys on the D-line and these linebackers, they're running as fast as DBs of old. So you need a guy who's thick, can move, can get out of the pocket. I think Stroud gives us this. So I can't speak for the Carolina. I want Carolina to take anybody but Stroud.
Sure.
Go ahead and take Bryce. Go ahead and take him. But I will say this. It will be really hard to screw up a quarterback pick with this draft. Now, we know how this works.
Yeah.
If there's 10 guys going, 3 of them are going to be pretty good, and the other 7 are going to be, going on the circuit. That's just the law of numbers. That's just how it's been for forever. Yeah. But I do I do. Of all the quarterbacks coming out, I think Stroud is a guy. I think Anthony Richardson is a freak athlete.
Yes, he is.
He does have what we would call a lot of upside. I think like he's basically Cam Newton with more speed, which is a scary composition.
Yes.
So but I would like to see Stroud go to my Texans, and I guess you could say by that logic, Bryce Young can go first.
Okay, I understand completely, and I would agree with you completely. If you can get Stroud in a Texans uniform, you do it as quickly as you can. But I do think you guys got to go find that guy, that quarterback that is going to be your guy. I would love to go down the path of the Houston Texans and why y'all fired your coach that I thought did a really good job, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bite my tongue.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not ready to talk about the Texans more than I already have. My allotment of Texas news is done now.
Okay.
How about you don't put me through that?
I understand. I understand completely. Let's move to a happier subject, because as you can see behind me, I've been going through it as well. You wrote 2 books, Awaken the Baller Within, and I Am More Than Enough, 3 ways to overcome the fear of your own reflection. You have one more book available. I want to come back to that one. I want to bring that back up. Talk to me a little bit about these 2 books. What inspired you to write these, and what could listeners expect if they go pick them up?
So Awaken the Baller Within was written at a time when I was doing pretty well in life. I bought the house I'm still sitting in right now at 29 years old. I was at the height of my Fox Scout.com days, had a job, had side hustles. I was speaking. Everything was rocking at that time. And I had a relationship going. If anybody out there has ever been in a relationship, first one I took serious, and then it just fell apart. And I remember going through a real depressive time, and I needed to find a way to get out of it. So obviously, how do you get out of it? Had a nice little conversation with God, and was just like, look, man, this isn't working out. I'm not doing life too well. So how about this? You wake me up tomorrow, we'll try something new. We'll do this your way instead of my way. And so, I got more into the word. I started reading the Bible a lot more. And I also started reading a lot of personal development books. That's when the Think and Grow Rich happened. Who Moved My Cheese, Richest Man in Babylon, Inspired Destiny. Like, I'm starting to read all these books. And so I'm like, okay, hired a mentor. And so I'm trying to get all the pieces in life to be able to make things work. So I got this new spiritual and personal development, but I'm still a jock covering football. So it's like, how do I marry the two? So I wanted to make a book about the mindset of athletes. So I did what Napoleon Hill did with Think and Grow Rich. I just did it with athletes. That's where I keep making references to Michael Thomas, Russell Shepard, John Geoffrey, and these Andre Dean, these kind of guys like that. And so I put together a book that was for athletes who can understand the mindset that it takes to win, right? And so, I'm studying these guys. I'm doing the sit down, and it really was built off of Russell Shepard, because I did the first interview when he came home from his first semester at LSU. I was upstairs in his room, and his parents were having a fish fry. It was during Christmas break, and we talked for about an hour and 10 minutes. And I was telling you, I came away from that and was like, how about I do this 99 more times, and let me get the philosophy of what it takes to be successful. And so started going around with it, man. And it just, he took me behind the curtains of what it takes to be successful, because we know a lot of guys with talent, but why do some guys with talent, why do we not see them play past a year or two, right? Why do they not make it? Why, when you see a guy in high school and you're just like, man, that guy's going to be the next fill in blank here. And they say, 2 years later, like, where is he? He's not in college. He's not in the NFL. He's not in the NBA. Where'd he go? And you're a coach. And my father used to tell me this a long time ago, and I didn't want to believe him. He's like, some of the greatest players you'll never get a chance to see or play against. Because it's like, for every LeBron, there's 150 guys who are just as good or better than him. We'll never know. That's just the nature of how things go. And so I wanted to give guys the idea and the mindset of what it takes to do this from a mental standpoint, because that's what separates the good from the great from the elite. And so Awaken the Baller Within has a lot of tips when it comes to those types of things. And I made it in a way for athletes who don't like to read, because I didn't. So there's not a chapter in there longer than 12 pages. It's big print. It folds really well. Something that a guy can read in the locker room at halftime if he needed to get just a quick spurt. And so that's where Awaken the Baller Within was born. I wanted to make something for athletes to be able to show them what it takes to level up. But what I found is that as parents who knew me in the sports world were buying it for their kids, so the book would come in while the kids were at school. And so, parents crack it open and they're just like, wow, this book isn't about sports at all. Well, it is. It's just in the language. It's a metaphor. Because when I say keep showing up on the field of life, we're all ballers. Yes, because there were guys like, hey, I'm a better lawyer because of this. I'm a better nurse because of this. I'm a better parent because of this. I'm a better real estate agent. It's the mindset. It's just written in jock language because I'm a jock and I speak to jocks. And so that book ended up making it into the hands of quite a few people. I want to say I sold a bunch of those, and that was when, that was back when I had an independent publisher. So I was selling on my own. And man, I can't tell you how many times I sold books out of my trunk, kind of like the mixtape guys. So
Sure.
It was a good run. And I'm interested. I'm very fascinated how much that book is coming up lately, because obviously I wrote that book in 2011. And so, but it still seems to be a good resource. And I think I'm going to rewrite it probably in the next 2 years or so. I'm going to make a remix to it.
Talk to me about I Am More Than Enough. 3 ways to overcome the fear of your own reflection. Where did that come from? Who is that for? Where did you have to go to write that book?
That book came out of pain. That was, and it was interesting because I Am More Than Enough is written on the backdrop of Awaken the Baller Within. I had just written Awaken the Baller Within. And I was, for those who are authors, you get your author copies in, and my publisher had sent me 10 copies of my book. And of course, at the time, I want to share that with my father. And so it was the week of my birthday. I was turning 33. And so I think the books came in the weekend before. My birthday was on Tuesday. And so I'm like, that Saturday, I was going to go, a guy and his dad, crack a cold one. Let's talk about the book. He gets to look at it, the proud dad moment or whatever. Well, that never happened because the night after my 33rd birthday, my father died. And I didn't even know we were at that point. Like, I know my dad had some respiratory issues, but I didn't know it was to the point where it's like, I'm going to wake up one day and, I'm going to look over at my phone and my mom's going to be screaming into my voicemail 5 times. And so that I Am More Than Enough grew out of the idea that on the way to the hospital, I had asked God to grant me, to bless me with the idea that my father will walk out of this hospital. I've been hearing that he's dying and he's about to die, and I'm not believing it. And so when I get there, obviously I see the families lying on the side of the road, on the side of the hallways, and it's just like, it's 9/11, the Columbia Challenger accident, Hurricane Harvey all in one. It's just depressing in there. My mom's over there. She's frantic. I'm going to talk to the nurse. Hey, what are we looking at here? She's like, Dad has about a 4% chance of living. I'm like, all right, I'm a winner. That's all I need. 1% is more. That's all I needed. But then I went over and looked at my father, and I'm looking at him, and I just, for the first time, I did not feel like he was there, but I wanted to still believe that he would walk out of there. Well, it came a time to make that decision, to make the bold decision at that time. And so my mom was like, hey, they said he's not going to live unless he stays on machines. And looking at my mom, looking at my sister, looking at my brothers, I said, my father is the strongest man I know, and he would not want to be just propped up by a machine. That's just not how he lived. I was like, turn the machine off and let my dad fight, and whatever happens, happens. Let him fight. And my dad stayed alive for 4 more hours.
Oh, wow.
But it was over, and it was like, God called him home, and that was that moment. But I was not too pleased with God in the moment. So I went outside and had a nice choice conversation with him where I'm screaming, crying, sweating, and everything else. And I asked him, I said, I thought I was clear in saying I wanted my father to walk out of this hospital. And a voice came over me and said, I did grant you what you wanted. He is walking out of here, but he's walking out of here as you. He's giving you everything you needed. He's giving you the values, the work ethic, the integrity. you know what you're called to do. Now go do what the Father I chose for you and your Heavenly Father wants you to do, and go live the great and amazing life we're calling you to do. And I Am More Than Enough was birthed out of that, because at that moment, I did not believe I was enough. Because my father was my moral barometer. It's like, he was retired at the time. So any time of day you called him, he was always going to answer the phone, and he always had an answer. So anytime I was stuck between a moral conundrum, or just needed some advice, or just needed to just hear my dad, he was always there. And so when that was gone, I didn't know what to do with myself. But what it did is it forced me to grow up very quickly. And so when you start talking about image is everything, which is the backdrop for the first chapter in I'm More Than Enough, is image is everything. And what that is that when you look in the mirror, you own all of it, right? Yeah. I'm talking about stuff that's your fault, not your fault. I don't care about faults. I don't, mom's on crack, dad's in jail, not your fault, but it is your problem. So I need you to own everything in the mirror. And so image is everything is the idea of taking full responsibility for all the crap in your life, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, the I wish this never happened, all of it, right? And so it puts you in a mindset where it's like, okay, I'm going to take dominion over my life right now, and I'm going to take all of this. And so obviously image is everything. And then it's like accepting who you are, right? Accepting that where you are, it's because of you, right? Even if outside factors, it's still you. So accepting yourself and deciding, okay, all right, I'm 5'8", I want to be 6'3". Not happening. It's over. Okay. I wish this. It's that, that kind of pie in the sky, which doesn't work in life, right? And of course, the last thing is mindful changes. The changes that you need to make in life. I don't like my job. Okay, well, what do you need to do to level up? I don't like my performance on the field. Okay, what are you going to do this offseason to be better? I don't like the relationship between me and my coach. Have you sat down with him man to man and see if you can work your differences out? Because you need to deal with him for the next 2 years, right? So we need to figure out something. Either that or you're going to transfer. So what are you going to do? This coach doesn't like me stuff is not going to work. So I look at all of those things, and you make the changes you need to make in life, but just live with those decisions. All of it really is down to personal accountability and responsibility. That everything here, my next breath, what's in the mirror, all that stuff, I own it all, and I am more than enough. Reminds you that not only are you enough, you are exceedingly more than enough when you take responsibility for the junk you've caused in your life, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. That's what I'm More Than Enough focuses on mainly.
Wow, Ahmard, you got me fired up. I'm ready to go through, go run through the wall myself for you. I absolutely love it. You have worked with kids in need and found them scholarship money at times. How did you get involved in this, and what is that program about? Talk to me a little bit about that.
So coming off of the job I took fresh out of high school to work for the community newspaper, I covered those 4 schools. Well, at one of those schools, one of the families had helped their son get to college by doing, the videos and put together a little process for that. They saw me as a journalist and was just like, this guy knows quite a bit about football. They used to bounce ideas off of me. They knew I was connected to a lot of coaches. And so they wanted to start a college football recruiting service with me as the VP. So I started as a startup helping young guys find scholarship money. And I would use all the attributes they had. For some, it was, they had the talent, maybe not the grades. Some people had the grades, maybe not the talent. And so you would work through all of these different things. And so I was, we had a formula together. I was reaching out to the coaches. I was scouting their films. One of the things that was very key that I was doing is I was spending hours breaking down the film and creating their highlight videos, because I was talking to college coaches asking like, hey, like, how long does a highlight video need to be before you're just going to turn it off? And I remember a coach telling me, he said, Vital, if they can't get me in the first 4 plays, I'll turn it off. Yeah. And he's like, for linemen, I may go up to 7 plays. So I never made a highlight tape over 10 plays. And, people are sending me in these like long 3.5 minutes. I'm like, they're not watching that. Nope. They're not watching it at all. And so I would go in and I would have my good old pad. Y'all remember these?
Oh, yeah.
Good old pad. And I would I would just scouting plays. I'm like, all right, and I would rank them, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stars. Oh no, I would go 1, 2, or 3. Obviously, 1 was the top, 2 was secondary, and 3 was, what it was. When I got done, all the 3s were gone.
Sure.
And then it's like, if there was enough 1s, you went with that, and you took the best of the 2s. And so I was doing all of those things. And so, I think my greatest feat was, there's a family out there right now, and shoot, he might be listening when this at this moment, but he had 3 sons, and I met him at a Nike camp, and we worked with his kids. I think his first kid had 5 offers, his second kid had 4 offers, his last kid had 2 or 3 offers. First kid went to Air Force Academy.
Okay.
Do the math, it's $375,000, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe give or take a few dollars. Who knows? It might be $1 million at this point in time, as much as college has gone up. His second son went to Houston Baptist, which was $56,000 and some change per year. And the third one went to Austin College. And so that family alone, I saved about $600,000-$700,000.
Sure.
So we're good friends. And like when, and he's a huge supporter of mine. And it's funny because he was one of the guys who he used to buy copies of Awaken the Baller Within to give out to young men at camps. And he was coaching Little League. So he would pass those out. Like he would buy batches of books, and they weren't for him. He would give them away to young men who were Little League football guys. So just coming up with a formula, man. I wanted to find a way for young men to be able to go to college and be able to tap into different things. It was, I would try to get them as much money on the football end, and I had some other people who would help me out. Like, hey, can you go research some scholarships for me? Let's find them, 500 here, 1,000 here, like just piecing stuff together. Back when you could actually go to college for about, $10K a semester.
Right.
Lord knows those days are over.
Yes,
but,
they are.
But I remember those days when you piece together a bunch of $1,000, $500, $3,000 scholarships and be able to, make a young man's dream come to pass.
Yeah.
And so that was over time, I realized, between that family and, whether you're talking about, Oklahoma, whether you're talking about Rice, you're talking about USC, you're talking about Texas, you're talking about, I think one went to Ohio. I mean, it's just all over the country, man, LSU. And I just love the fact of like, I don't even need to be in the video. I just like the idea of looking at some of my guys from back then and even now, and seeing that, like, man, they are very successful. I think one of my guys right now is coaching at Memphis right now.
Okay.
He went to Baylor. He went to Baylor as a tight end back in the day. And so it's beautiful, man. And this is what I feel like you're supposed to be in the game to do, to be able to change lives. Like you said, you're a coach. There's some levels where coaching does pay you pretty well, but until you get to like basically like the top of the food chain at the NFL, NBA, or something like that level, you're doing it because you love the future.
Yeah.
You're doing it because you love student athletes. You do it because there's a currency that needs to be retaught to future generations. There's a generosity and a gratitude. There's a service. There's a currency that goes when you can look and see a young man graduate from college. You see someone who lands a Fortune 500 job who you mentored years ago. You see someone who's, expecting their second or third child, and they live in a beautiful neighborhood and have a beautiful family. There's a currency that doesn't quantify into something you can put into the bank, but it goes into something much greater than that. And I think, and I love coaches who live with that type of mentality, because not all do. Many do, but not all. But the ones who do, man, like they realize they're a father to so many, right? Like you look and you say, like, that's one of my kids over there.
Yeah.
And they mean that. It's not, they didn't birth them, but they did birth them.
Yeah.
They birthed them through high school. They birthed them through the college process. They birthed them through off season. Like it's bigger. The game is bigger than all of us. And, it may have taken me some time to realize that, but now I know that's where my calling is.
Ahmard, you went into motivational speaking it sounds like you have traveled all over. Where all have you gone? You're going all over speaking these days. Where all have you gone?
Abu Dhabi, Zambia, Dubai. Those are as far as speaking is concerned, those will be, I have clients in Pakistan, clients in the UK, a yoga teacher in Poland.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I've I got my big break through some interesting portals, through social media. One day I ended up reaching out to somebody kind of on accident, and they looked at my profile and was just like, "You're very motivational." And I was like, thank you. 3 days later, this person sent me a message and was just like, "I've watched every video you've had, and you're one of the most inspiring persons I've ever met, and you need to be on a bigger stage." It just so happened that that person worked for the royal family of Dubai.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, like, how? Don't ask me. It's like what they say, just God, only God. Like, I don't know how all those pieces came together. And of course I went on a tour through Abu Dhabi and Dubai, did some work out there, and it was amazing. And I mean, I still sometimes sit back and say, like, how do some of these things happen? But sometimes you say there's some things that aren't meant to be explained. And so obviously going international was pretty cool, but there's a lot of work to be done right here in my backyard as well. So I'm committed to all of it.
I understand completely. You have a book that is available to download from your website. It is called Now What, and it is a focus guide for young adults who want concrete, practical solutions to their problems. How can listeners get this book, and tell me, what should they expect from it?
So it's booknowwhat.com, booknowwhat.com. It's 5 steps to get up and create the most of life. Everyone knows that person in their life who's at that point. And when you mean that point, like everything they've done, tried, and attempted has just failed. Yeah. Maybe they've been in the criminal justice system. Maybe they've just filed bankruptcy too many times. Maybe they've had a bunch of failed businesses. Maybe they've had, a family situation where they can't afford the family setup as it's initially constructed. Been in a lot of trouble. I built this book in the summer of 2020, which, maybe your audience was around and know a few things happened during that time.
Right.
Spiritually, socially, politically, financially, scientifically. All these things were going on at the same time. And I remember driving down the highway here in Houston, and I was fed up with the conversations. I'm owed something, you're going to pay for this. You're going, this isn't fair. And I was just like, shut up. I couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
And so I was like, you know what? Because whenever somebody's sitting up there complaining, what does somebody always say? Well, what's your solution? Bet I got one, and I started it. Okay, here it is. We're gonna go through 5 steps. You want a solution? I got you right here. Don't worry about it. And so 5 steps to create the most of life. We go through steps to where, what do we have going on and where are we trying to go? Very simple. So the first thing we do is we reflect. Like, okay, there's a pile of dirty clothes in the middle of the floor. There's a fire going on in the kitchen. There's a kid screaming in the other room. And I don't know what that is at my front door. You got all kinds of mess going on. And so you reflect on, how did we get here? What's the damage, right? Because that's what we do, right? When every natural disaster, what do? We assess the damage, right? Whether it's a hurricane, a flood, tornado. All right, bring the adjuster out. We got a mess here. How much of a mess do we have here? And so you do that with your life, with your mindset, with your surroundings. How bad is it? You discover that. And so after that, you go into reflection stage. And after that, you go into decide, okay, life kind of sucks right now. So what do you want to do? If you could Thanos snap your way into something better, what would life look like for you? And so you decide, hey, I want to, become a police officer. I want to become a teacher. I want to write a book. I want to start a family. I want to, launch a business. I want to start a podcast. All right, you've decided. Good. Now you go into the planning phase, step 3. How do I do all of this? What are the steps? We work in reverse. Okay. The big goal is to write a book. Okay. Well, how do you break down doing that? All right. You start off with, a plan here, a plan here. And so you start putting together steps. That's when you start putting together business plans, marketing strategies. If it's a particular trade, what kind of training do I need? Do I need more education? What does that cost? Do I need financing? Right? Who am I in need to be able to work this out? Does my city support this? Right? So many different questions. Then you go through that when you're going through your planning phase and find out, where are my gems? Where is the goal? Where are the opportunities? Right? And you break all that stuff down. And of course, after that, you got to go into action. And, whether your plan is complete or not, or whether it's good or not, doesn't matter. You need to get on the road and start running. Yes, you will run into a roadblock. Yes, you will run into the big bad wolf. Yes, you will run into a pothole. All of that's unacceptable because you don't know what you don't know. And anyone who's ever started a business, you've been around for a long time. How many business plans from start to finish have been like just, that it worked perfectly? Never. No. It doesn't. It doesn't. And so you have to go out there and test drive things, and you go into action. And that's when we start getting very intentional about where we're going to go, making these power moves. Because if you put a goal out there, every day you need to be moving towards that in some kind of way, shape, or form. Even if it's reading, a short blog post about something that you're trying to do, you need to be educating yourself, and you need to be leveling yourself up all the time. And the last, and to me, probably the most important of all of those, is to seek, and that's seek counsel. We haven't really talked about that much, but we both are very familiar with the team dynamic. The team dynamic goes beyond sports. I believe every young man, and really young lady as well, should have a council of people around them to pour into them, to empower them, right? Starting from the age of 13 all the way to the rest of your life. You need a community around you, right? We're not meant to live life alone. And you're not going to get there to success alone. You hear guys like, oh, I did this all on my own. Shut up, you're lying. You didn't. Just like anybody on a sports team. Even an individual, even if you're a track runner, you didn't do it alone.
No.
And so you seek counsel. And I always say you need 3 people. You need the mentor, right? You need someone who's going to pour into you, somebody you can hand your goals over to and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you hold me accountable? And you want someone who loves you, but does not infatuate about you. Who doesn't like a yes person. You don't want a yes person. Right. In fact, get all the yes people out of your life. For your audience out there, anybody who's a yes person in your life, get them out of your life immediately.
Agreed.
Because you need people who are going to be willing to hold you accountable and love you enough to tell you that you're wrong, or to tell you that you're out of line with this, And so the first person you get is your mentor. Kind of keeps you in line, kind of like a one size fit all, does everything for you. Then you need someone who's a expert in your industry. Yeah. Like if you're going into auto mechanics, so who's the best auto mechanic in town? Why don't you go reach out to him, become his apprentice, set up a meeting with him, have coffee with him, be a servant to him in that way. And I know people don't like using that word, but it's a very powerful word and a practical word that we all need to stand by. Yep. So that, and then I think you always need that patriarch, that old school, papa, or whatever you call him in anyone's culture, the old guy who's seen more in a month than you've seen in your whole life. That guy, the patriarch, the godfather. You need that person with that old wisdom who can teach you a thing or two about morality. Because I think we sometimes lose that. Like we're always trying to find different strategies. It's like, this strategy may be a good strategy, but is it good for the bottom? Is it good in a moral sense? And I'm not one who just like really gets caught up too much in that from the standpoint that like, pushing the envelope here or there, but like, if it's not illegal, but it's just morally kind of disgusting, you need someone in your life who will be like, it's not cool to do that.
Yeah.
It's not illegal. It's not prohibited. It's just not cool. Yeah. And you probably shouldn't do that. You need someone in your life who can kind of be like, yeah, you don't want to make that move. And so that's where the 5 steps come from, because if you're coming from point A to point B, those 5 steps can get almost anyone from out of their hole where they have no flashlight or a match, and get to a place where they can live in a light, live in a place where they can do some great and amazing things.
Ahmard, you went out and you also started your own media company. It has the name That Guy Media Group. Why did you want to form your own media company? What do you do with it? What is that all about? Tell me about that media group.
It's my LLC to encompass all of my things, my writing, my video work. Whenever I launch a podcast, all of those different things. I needed sort of a house to be able to keep all of my skills under. Because people are like, well, what do you do? It's like, how much time do you have?
Yeah.
And so, and you want to make sure and keep, you, the person, separated from the company, so you can separate your personal from your professional. And so I started that LLC. Oh man, I think around the time when I wrote Awaken the Baller Within. So it's been around that long. I want to continue to do more production through it. I got a road manager who used to do some work with Music World and Beyonce and Destiny's Child. So I'm getting with him. I just brought on a new media guy, one of my young adults at the church. I love empowering those guys. So he's got a new videographer. He did some work with me. I just posted his first video today. I'm excited to see and, develop what he's doing. He'll be, with the media group, got producers making beats and different things like that, man. So we're just trying to build a house that's sturdy, that can keep all the media work under it, but can also have some room to bring some youngsters in who can be able to do some work and be able to get some mentoring through that. That's a plan I'm sort of working on right now. I'm trying to see what that looks like, but definitely want to make a place where young fellas can not only come make a small check, but can get some experience and some things that are very beneficial in today's society.
Ahmard, I got to tell you, I didn't know that much about you going into this interview. I'm so glad that we were able to sit down and talk and look at some of the things that you're doing with kids, with even adults. But I'll say this from a personal level. One of the things that I really love that you're doing, that I can see, you have a passion for kids, you have a passion for teaching, you have a passion for getting kids on the right path, but you're teaching a lot, and I'm not saying only, but you're teaching a lot of young males who desperately need that. I feel personally in this country right now, young males are lost. They're not exactly sure what to do. Is this too aggressive? Is this too this? You are teaching young males, not just sports or athletic, life skills that are so needed. And I could not love that anymore because like I said, we are at a kind of a crossroads right now of young males doing the right thing. And you have taken that on. You are teaching young kids. I absolutely love what you are doing right here.
I am very passionate about our young men. And I'll be very transparent. What society has lied to our young people. And it's extremely devastating, the lies they're telling our young men, and some of them have bought into it. And a lot to our young ladies too, but my focus is a lot on the young men because we have to build this world.
Yep.
Period. End of story. We have to be leaders. We have to be providers. And I reject the notion of toxicity. I reject the notion of too competitive. I reject the notion of all of those things. I'm not here for it. I want my dudes to be strong. I want my dudes to be stoic. I want them to be pragmatic, and I want them to have values and live as close to a righteous life that they can. I know you will make mistakes because you are a teenager. I get it. But I want to put you in a place where you're an earner, to where you're not looking for a handout, to where you're not wanting an entitlement. Telling guys like, oh, don't wrestle. No, I want guys to wrestle. Yes. Right? I want guys to go out there. I want guys to go out there and challenge one another. Right? And the people's like, are you advocating for violence? Yeah, kind of. I am. Yeah, I am. Because you know why? Because young men are forged that way. Right? We have to sprain our ankle. We have to try things that probably won't work, but we think they will. All that. We need to get bit by every crawling insect in the world to come around to this, right? We need to, get caught up in situations where we're forced to think in the moment, right? Because why? If we're going to protect those who are most vulnerable, our parents, wives, the children, we need to have been through something. You can't just think that we don't come ready-made. No. Right? We have to be challenged. We need to get hurt. That's why I tell parents all the time, like, What's the one thing you say? I said, put your kid in competitive sports, a sport where there's a clear winner and a loser. I don't want this everybody's a winner mess, because everybody's not. Everybody's not a winner, right? And like, you're a winner to me. He lost. Let him deal with his loss. Let him hold his L. Yep. You need to let young men feel what a loss feels like and let them take all of it in. Because if you try to shield them from that, that's this whole quiet quitting and, oh, I'm worth more than this. I don't work for less than 25 an hour. You're not worth it, dude. You're not. Where's your skills? Right? Like the idea of taking that crappy job where you're sweeping floors, cleaning out toilets, right? We've taken all of that stuff out of the game. And we need to bring some of that stuff back. Yeah, yes, it is time to go old school, draconian, to get the game back on track. Why? Because society told young men, you're too tough, you're too stoic, you're too direct, you're too this, and you need to scale some of that back and check in with your softer side. Crap. No, we're not doing that. Meanwhile, you're telling the young ladies, like, you don't need men. You go be strong. You can do it. And just do all. It's like, how's that working out for us right now?
You're right.
How's that working out? You know what I'm saying? Young ladies are lost. Suicidation among teenage girls is through the roof right now. Young men are losing purpose everywhere, right? And we're like, well, how did this happen? Well, you keep telling them that there's something they're not, right? And then you decimate the home going all the way back to the 60s. And now here we are, right? You got young men thinking that there's something they're not. You got young ladies sitting up there trying to lift boulders. And you know what? We're all out of order. And so I pull the men aside and be like, I know what society's telling you, and they're lying to you. Here's what we're going to do. This is how we're going to dress. This is how we're going to eat. This is how we're going to work out. This is how we're going to earn money, right? I got young men I'm working with right now, 15 years old, and they're saving money. And they're like, hey, what am I supposed to do with this money? Man, I have a revolving door, a young man who come through and like, hey, you want a consult? Let's go, right? Because I don't want any of my guys to fall to the wayside. I see what society's already done with them, and it's disgusting. You know what? And I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight. Like, hey, you want to get to them? You got to come through me, right? Because I'm going to put them up on game. I'm going to tell them everywhere where you're lying to them. I'm going to tell them to be strong. I'm going to tell them to be pragmatic. I'm going to tell them to not disregard your feelings, but when you're making decisions, get out of your feelings, right? You need to make
right there.
You need to make decisions based on the fact of, hey, you live with the results. You know what? Some of your decisions may not work, but you own it and say, you know what? At the time and at the moment, this information I had was the best I had to make this decision, and you live with it. And some of them are going to end up badly. In fact, a lot of them are going to end up badly, but you own that. And you say, I take full responsibility for all this, and I'll clean this mess up. That's the way I want young men to show up in the world, not to sit back and hide behind it. Let me go ask my mom first. No, you stand up on your square and you say that this is what we're going to do, and we're going to make these changes, and this is what is going to happen, right? That is the type of lessons I want to instill in my young guys, and tell them to reject the notion that they're anything but strong, capable, and willing young men, right? That's where I stand in with that.
Absolutely love it. I could not agree with you anymore. Ahmard, tell listeners, where can they go find your work? Where's the best place to get your books? Where should they go?
The book is available. Last my publisher told me it's available at 33 different online locations. So you can definitely get through and get that. Now What? 5 Steps and Get Up and Create the Most of Life. Would love for you all to patronize and get in on the book. As always, we gave you the link out earlier if you want to preview it or whatever and all those things. If you have some young people in your life, it's definitely a great resource for them. My link is ahmardvital.com. That's AHMARDVITAL.com. I'm available on all the social media platforms. Instagram and Facebook is probably the most active. A little bit on LinkedIn here and there, but I'm not hard to find. No alias. It's just Ahmard Vital. Come reach out to me. And by the way, I know you have a lot of coaches out there who listen, which means you have a lot of athletes and a lot of ballers out there. I understand that these past 3 years have been devastating on some of your young people and on some of your teams. And I know that you're having to struggle through some things. And some of the things that we went through are damages that are going to take either some time or some of them maybe not at all. I'm here for the young people in that way. So if you go to my website, ahmardvital.com, or email me at info@ahmardvital.com, put Daily Dose in the subject line, and then give me a quick rundown. If you have a teen or a young adult who just really life has punched them at one time too many and they don't have too much fight back and they're just trying to find a new plan and work through some things, put the Daily Dose in the subject line. I'll do a 30-minute discovery call with them so we can at least unpack what's going on in their life, get you on a path or whatever. It's sort of a step one of the coaching I do. Okay. But I do want to offer that complimentary call to anyone who uses the Daily Dose podcast as their in the subject line, and want to reach as many young people as possible to be able to get them on a path to where not only are they earning, but they're at a place where they feel fulfilled in what they're doing. So I want to make that offer to your audience, and hopefully look forward to hearing from some of them.
I appreciate that so much. And one thing that I would really encourage listeners, don't wait until there's a problem. Don't wait until that player, that athlete is going down a bad path. Reach out to Ahmard now. Get them on the right path before there's a problem. You will be much, much happier in the long run. Ahmard, I got to thank you so much for coming into the Daily Dose today. Could not appreciate your time anymore. Hey, let's do this again. Don't be a stranger, because I absolutely love talking to you. We need to stop back by, get some more coaching thoughts from you in the future.
I'm ready and available. Thank you for having me on the Daily Dose. It's been a pleasure.